There was a woman who was suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. And we might ask, what has her ailment done to this woman? Chronic illness is no passing pain. It's not like the summer heat that kind of goes away a little bit in the evening and the nighttime, so you get some kind of reprieve. It won't go away if she starts eating a gluten-free diet or eats less red meat. Lying down doesn't help. Sitting down still hurts. Standing or walking or stretching, none of this helps. The hemorrhages still come. The pain is still there. The woman still suffers. For 12 long years, she suffers. What do you think happened to her during this time? As a person, what happened to her? What became of her hope, her fortitude, her dedication? If she had been a kind woman before her illness, do you think that she was still kind? Did she lose her sense of patience? When she heard in the Psalms about waiting on the Lord, did she scoff now? Did she have trouble sleeping at night, not only because of the hemorrhages, but also because she was just so frustrated, so angry, so completely done with it all, that in her heart, that her heart was clenched too much for her to get any sleep? What was her relationship with God like? Did she pray anymore? Or let's turn this around. Maybe she had never prayed, and now she did. I've been assuming with my questions that this woman had once been strong, determined, and steady in her faith, but maybe she hadn't really given that much thought to prayers beforehand. Maybe she didn't listen when the Psalms were read. Maybe she never really could sleep. But now, after 12 years of trying every type of cure, she had this new budding faith. Maybe the suffering, maybe it planted something inside of her that was growing day by day. Maybe slowly, but growing nevertheless. Maybe even before she touched Jesus' clothes, she had become a new woman. So much that her family didn't even recognize her anymore. I ask these questions because St. Mark gives us this really beautiful glimpse of this woman. We know so little about her, but what we know gives us an intimate sketch of who she is. She's someone who has been suffering for a long time. She's someone who has the determination or the hope or maybe the stubbornness to try everything in her power to be cured. She's someone who has had money and who has now lost it. She has given everything and gained nothing, or so it seems. And there's more. Here in Jesus is another chance at a cure, but she doesn't rush up to him and ask or demand or beg for him to help her. She does not come up and speak to his face or call from his side, but comes up behind him and touches his cloak. Not his tunic, certainly not his body, but just his outer clothing, and she is healed. And even then, when Jesus asked who touched him, she doesn't jump up and say, "Oh, here, me, I touched you, and I was cured." She comes in fear and trembling. She falls down before him. And like someone who sinned deeply, she tells him the whole truth. Then the woman is healed, and I think this is the third healing. When Jesus pronounces forgiveness upon her, she is healed once. The second healing was the physical healing, when she touched Jesus' cloak and her hemorrhages stopped. But the first healing, though, came before any of this happened, before the scene happened. It was a healing of her spirit, and I think that that healing came not in spite of, but because of the 12 long years of illness. The woman came in humility, and as Jesus says, in faith, or perhaps maybe that humility and faith are the same thing. Her faith was quiet. It did not need the glory of the crowds or a round of applause for Jesus and his power. Her faith needed the simple presence of Jesus Christ. And I think that faith was created by her 12 long years of suffering. Now, I have to stop here for a moment. It may seem that I'm saying that there is virtue in suffering, or that faith is made that faith is made stronger in waiting a long time in extreme pain. In a way, this is true. We learn virtue in waiting, and we grow in adversity. But suffering alone does not teach us to be good, humble people. There are many people who suffer from physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual pain for a long time, and those years are nothing but pain. One of the first things we learn in pastoral care is that suffering can be holy. The second thing we learn, however, is that suffering just simply hurts, and that Jesus calls the church into that pain. We've heard recently some public personalities say that things like slavery or oppression of women are good because it taught brown people and women some important lessons about work and worth. That is not just an ugly thing to say. That's extremely hurtful, damaging, and abusive. God would rather us not suffer, which is one of the reasons he died on the cross, so that our suffering may be less. God wishes for our healing from suffering so much that even touching Jesus' cloak healed someone. Suffering is quite simply bad and can hurt us down to our very core. And yet, in suffering, God can find us. Even if we are not healed, God can still rescue us. This woman with the hemorrhage, I think, is an example of this. She was saved and healed before she even touched Jesus. She did not fall into despair during those 12 years, but she was given hope. She did not become puffed up with pride, thinking that she should be healed because she deserved it. And in Mark's story, we even hear that she was humble before the needs of another person, a man with a sick daughter who was at death's door. She could have stopped Jesus and made a show of things, but she didn't. She knew that all she needed was to touch him and that she would be healed. Let him go to others who might be in need more. This was enough for her. And we who sit here now, listening to this story about a woman who is a miracle, we may wonder, how do you have that much faith? How did you not lose your faith in all those years of pain? Mark doesn't tell us, but I think there were probably two important things that must have happened for this woman. First, her community must have been with her. Many people interpret this story in a way that sees this woman as alone, because if she was hemorrhaging, she must have had to stay apart from her community. That's probably true, but I think that there must have been a few important women who stuck with her through those 12 years. They must have prayed with her, visited her, listened to her, sought out help, and soothed her when the pain continued. Suffering alone does not cure illness, but the company of loved ones makes it bearable, which is why, again, the church is called on to be the presence of Christ to those in need. Second, I think she prayed a lot. Indeed, she may have learned how to pray, how to really pray during those 12 years. We often pray for release from pain, but when that release doesn't come, we enter into a different sort of dialogue with God. We ask God why we weren't healed miraculously like this woman was healed. We may demand that God come to us in our despair. We may sling some nasty words at God, but if we keep on going with God in our suffering, something is released, and we see God and ourselves and the world around us differently. We become more humble, more hopeful, and our faith is somehow made stronger even when relief does not come. I want to end this sermon with thanksgivings. There are people here in our congregation, right here in this room now, who are sitting with people who have been in 12 years of suffering. Maybe they're not 12 years, maybe they're 8, maybe they're 14, but they are sitting with people in their 12 years of suffering. They go and sit with people who are in pain and who have given everything to find a cure and have come to nothing. And yet they still have hope, even if it's battered and bruised. And they have it in part because of those who go to be with them, who visit them, who pray with them, who call them on the phone. Thank you for being with those people. Thank you for being with those who are suffering before Jesus comes or as Jesus is coming. Be that when they are healed or when they enter into the glory of our eternal Savior. Please know that you are miracles to those in pain. Know that God is alive in you. Know that you are following Jesus Christ. Know in your exhaustion as you come from tending to people and caring for them and waiting upon them in their suffering, that you are a grace and a beauty and a wonder and a hope that comes from beyond this world. Thank you so much.